Hey, I was friends with your dad. Like, you're allowed to say that no matter what's going on.
Right?
Yeah.
Hey, I made this map. Hello?
Hey, your mom's super nice. Like, oh, goodness. Well, I don't know if he could say I made this map.
Oh, speaking of, it's so funny you say that today. I was listening to The Fox and the Foxhound. Shout out to The Fox and the Foxhound.
Woo
And
woo.
on their episode talking about a fan fiction called All the Young Dudes. It's supposed to be like one of the biggest well-known fanfics about Marauder's age. And apparently in this fanfic, they have a very deep and very cool origin story of the Marauders map, where it was Lupin when they were very young. Lupin was starting these friendships, but he didn't trust them yet. And so he spent
Hmm.
a lot of time alone. And so, out of a lonely child with some talent and brains walking around the grounds all the time by himself, he started to make notes and create sort of this map for himself. So he would learn where's the trick stair, so he knew to jump over it and what to do this. And he started making the map. And then one day, in this story, it's before his birthday, Sirius needles him and to say, what do you do when you're alone? What do you do all day? And he's sort of like, well, I do this stupid map thing. And he's like, okay, no, this is flipping awesome. And then they all start saying, well, can we add to it? Can we make a little magic? Oh, we need to know when Filch is here. And the story actually builds a backstory for the Marauders map that I thought was amazing.
That's
And
cool.
I love the way the friendship was when they were telling it, which made me think of, again, us doing this today and how cool that we were doing Sirius and Lupin, because I do think the biggest tragedy for me of the whole story is how many years Sirius and Lupin lost where they could have been consoling and being friends to each other out of, I don't know, the biggest thing I can say is prideful stupidity, because neither one of them ever
Well,
stopped to say it was Peter who was the
yeah.
secret keeper. Like, even if they just said, even if they suspected each
Well,
other,
they didn't know.
Well, they
they
didn't
knew that,
know and they didn't see each other again.
oh,
He was
that's
out of the
They
country when it all
right.
happened.
I forgot Peter. I forgot he
until
did.
he saw him on the map, Lupin thought Sirius like he
Yeah,
really lost everything because yeah, that would have
Just
been a much happier childhood for Harry too.
right.
well,
So two
yeah.
things. First, I'm laughing because every time you say Sirius and Lupin, I want to say Remus. Because for our listeners, one of the things we discussed before we started recording was that everybody calls them the way Harry thought of them. So he called him Sirius, and we all call him Sirius. He didn't call him Remus, he called him Professor Lupin. So we all call him Lupin. But every time you say it, I want to be like, Remus, call him Remus. We're adults. You can call him by his first name. So, but that was just a funny. But going back to their 11-year-old selves, they're put into this room. As we know, it could have been 4 boys or 18. We don't know. Um, so they're in this room and they've got this really shy, mousy kid and these two boisterous boys. And something draws them together. They befriend him. Looking back at who we know they were, assuming James and Sirius came in knowing each other already, they befriend Remus. But if that had not been the case, do you think Sirius would have befriended Remus if not
No.
for the little bit of kindness that was in James at the
I doubt it. I think he was too myopic.
I was going to say,
Um
I think he's too much of a prankster. And I said he's not good at his pranks, but I think he would have picked on him.
I think he might have picked on him without having James there. And I think Lupin fit in because he enjoys a good joke.
Mm.
But I think James was definitely the initial, oh, he seems sad and lonely over there. Hey, what's your story?
Yeah, that's what I thought too. And it also said in there that Remus was the conscious of the four boys, but he and felt bad about many of the things they did, but he never stood up to them and stopped them because he didn't want to lose the only friends he'd ever had.
Oh my goodness.
And I was
I,
like,
you know,
wow, that is deep-seated loneliness.
I knew it wasn't going to be a happy walk in the park, but honestly, coming into this episode, I was like, oh, childhood friends, Sirius and Remus, woohoo! And forgot that their lives were really complicated.
Right, right. So what do you think? I mean, I have to believe that there were people who knew the old, some people who knew the story of Leo and his son in the wizarding world. We know it's not that big.
Hmm.
Do you think Sirius's family, any of them, knew about Remus?
I think yes, but not by name.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
I think
I
they
like
knew
that.
the story and they probably knew him as Leo's son, but they probably had never heard Remus's actual name.
Okay. All right. Because think about it, he didn't leave until he was 16, Sirius. So for, a good 5 years, this kid was around. Like,
Did they hang out there though? I feel like they're hanging out mostly at the Potters or
I
meeting each
think
other out and about.
mostly at the Potters, but the times that they stayed at Sirius's house, if nothing else, to pick on his brother and to make
Yeah,
him
fair.
crazy,
Touche.
So
And
they
I
We're
do
just
think, and
we're so dumb.
this
Say
was a question I was going to pose to you guys, but what were you saying, Sam? I'll remember.
Oh no, I was just I was just being serious, bullying his brother. Please continue.
No, do you think, because at times we get to see in our original trio, uh, Hermione and Ron hang out even though Harry's not there. How often do you think Sirius and Lupin hung out without James? Like every time James was at practice,
I
like
was
when
going to
did
say
their
there's
friendship
Quidditch.
strengthen?
There's Quidditch. I also think of the four boys, Remus is going to be the one creating study schedules and forcing them to
Yeah.
study. So I think he probably hung out with each of them individually for the classes they had to study with.
Okay.
And I don't think after, like, once they could start picking their individual classes, their what are those things called? Those
When
choice classes.
Like elective.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Words are hard. Once they could start picking electives, I don't think all of them pick the same ones every time. So I think that I can see Sirius picking things to stay with Remus, if for no other reason than to protect their mousy still friend. Whereas James was so into Lily and so into himself, I don't think he would have thought of signing up for a class to be with Remus.
I
Okay,
think it
so
might have been the other way around.
Really?
uh-huh.
Okay.
I keep laughing every time you say mousy friend, by the way, because it takes me to Peter, and I'm like, no,
Well,
she
they
doesn't.
can always take me to
Oh,
Peter. I do
see,
the same thing. You need a different
I
adjective.
don't think of him as
okay.
mousy. I think of him as bookish.
Okay, say bookish, whatever. I literally do not think of Peter because he's an evil rat. So
Oh, he's a
he's
rat. Okay,
gone.
sure,
So do
sure.
you think James would be the more protective of the two?
I don't know if protect. I think just more aware, and by the time they've reached, because Dumbledore, when he is describing James, says that he kind of calms down by like fifth or sixth year, enough that Lily is like, okay, fine, I'll go on one date with you. And if he's able to do that, which we know didn't come from his soul,
Yeah.
it came from, wanting to grow to be worthy of her. I think that same growth would have made him a little bit more of his friend group. Whereas in the memories and in the pranks and in the everything that we hear, Sirius is very much about himself because he's never really had to worry about anyone else.
Okay. And I'm not disagreeing. I had not thought of it that way. I like it. I like it.
Sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say I support that. I actually found it interesting because I was gonna say I was actually thinking that Sirius would pick every class with James so he could have his buddy.
That's
And
what I thought.
Remus, I pictured being that guy that was like, okay, I better take this class with them. They're never gonna pass it. You know what I mean?
Oh
Wow,
my
that was
God.
three totally
100%.
different takes, and I like all three.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they're all shades of, it's probably 3 different years. It's
Well,
all
I
shades of
also
them
think,
growing up.
like, I can see Remus taking arithmancy. I
Mhm.
cannot see James or Sirius in that class.
Yeah.
I could see Remus taking an extra class or two that they didn't.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. James being like, yeah, yeah, I'll hang out with, you're taking what? No, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Honestly,
here's another one. It's the 60s. We all know what was happening in the 60s. Do you think Remus and Sirius, because that's who we're talking about, spent any evenings high in the astronomy tower? And I don't mean high up in the air.
Oh my God, absolutely.
yeah.
The quiet ones do that,
Right.
I think okay, so
Yeah.
here's the story as I
especially
think
during
about it.
Quidditch.
I think James came to school one day because his dad, who's a famous potioneer family, had all these wacky ingredients down in the basement. And he found some wacky weed as one of the ingredients. And one day he kind of was playing with it, got a little hit off. It was like, oh my God, I got to tell the guys about this.
Oh my
And took
God.
it to school and was like, okay, guys, we got it. Come with me. Just come with me. Just come with me. Come on. And I think that's how it happened.
Okay, I have a completely different take, but go ahead, Sam. Say yours before I say mine, because
I just,
formed
so,
today.
because that's not where I thought you were going at all. Because in the 60s, there was also, racism. So I was wondering if Remus had some kind of like social justice thing, like Hermione does with the house elves.
And
And
that
they
goes
were,
closer to me.
okay, okay.
But it's the late 60s, early 70s. I always picture more disco. Oh, but it's England.
I mean, he's still getting high,
But here's where
100%.
here's what I, because of what I learned today about his mother being muggle born, they have a TV at home.
That's true. That's a good
And
point.
up until they leave school, he's living at home.
Yeah.
He's
Nope,
seeing the news. He's seeing all the stuff about weed. He's seeing all the alcohol. He's seeing all the racism. He was the social justice friend. And
100%.
he brought the weed to school.
which is possible. I'm not saying that's not possible. I am curious though, and this is something maybe our listeners could answer for me because I've never looked into this. What was happening in England during the late 60s, early 70s? Like, were they still doing a lot of demonstrations and social injustice?
The Beatles, that's kind of where
They
a lot
did
of
that
their
when they
songs.
came here and became popular here. I'm just curious. I don't know if it was the same level, same interesting. It's just curiosity.
Okay.
I'll be honest, I'm not super well versed in British social justice of the late 60s,
Right.
sadly.
I
Um,
think you two should go look it up and have fun. I'm going to say Remus brought weed to school.
I'm going to stick with James, but I have no problem with Remus bringing weed
see,
to
and
school.
I think it's absolutely serious. And I think they just each brought a different strain and they were just like, yo, James's is for the nights when we just want to hang out.
Okay, so here's funny. I see James with the weed. I see Sirius bringing LSD.
Mm,
Oh yeah,
that's the night
absolutely.
they came up with being animagi.
Yes,
And
yes.
actually saw themselves as Anna Badger.
You know what?